Hey guys, Jeff here, and today we are dealing with the popcorn ceilings in my 1974 Forever Home project house. We had the asbestos test done, and you guessed it, we tested positive. That stuff is everywhere. When you have to deal with asbestos, we really only have two solutions. One solution is a complete abatement, and eventually that's what we're gonna do. Our goal here in this house, of course, was to tear everything out and then bring everything up to the modern standard of today's building code. So that means all the drywall has to go. But for the purpose of this video, I'm gonna help you guys out. The second option is called encapsulation. So we take all of this filthy, dirty, nasty, ugly stucco, and we're going to skim coat and make smooth walls. I'm gonna go through every step of the encapsulation process so that you can do this without releasing that asbestos fiber into the air and making it a potentially dangerous place to live. So real quick guys, before I jump in and start rolling the ceiling, a couple of things you need. First of all, no nice watches, all right? This is the oil paint that we're gonna be using. It's an odorless Zinsser, it's oil paint. Whenever you work with oil, have some Varsol around. We want to mix this up because it sits on the shelf and it separates, okay? So you got a liquid on top and then the goo on the bottom. Wow, this one's really been sitting on the shelf a long time. One of the things about oil paint, guys, is you're not supposed to put this stuff on the shaker. You got to stir it. Oh, wow. The longer it sits, the worse it gets. A few other things you might need, guys. Grab yourself a cheap throwaway brush set, all right? This is amazing because at the end of the day, you don't want to buy a $30 brush to mess with oil and then have to clean it. Like, where are you going to clean this? You don't want to put this in your sinks, in your drain systems. You're going to have to go outside. It's a pain in the butt. It's better to just paint with oil, let the brush dry out and throw it in the garbage. This right here, split foam roller, very necessary. Each piece of this foam is cut, all right? And it acts as a way to paint around the contour, around the texture of the ceiling. So that's what goes, paints not just the surface of the stipple, but the sides as well. And it'll allow that ceiling texture to stay in place while you're painting, okay? Very important. And you wanna get a extension pole. Something that lets you paint 6 feet away, right? You really wanna be painting and walking. You don't wanna be rolling over above your head. Odorless paint. Oil, it smells great. It's actually refreshing, but if I pour from this into here now, I still don't have this solution perfectly mixed. So we're gonna go a little back and forth. Okay. And by doing the little bit of back and forth here, it's gonna give me a better solution, better mixture. Now, listen, the reason that I'm using oil paint, because I'm trying to encapsulate something that I don't want to sand past. If I was to use a latex product, and then I'm going to be skimming the ceiling and using drywall compound, there's so much texture up there, at some point we've got to sand that ceiling. If we come in contact with the asbestos particles, we don't want to let them go airborne. So, by using an oil-based paint, I have a much more bulletproof surface when I'm sanding. Okay, and in addition, because this is an old 70s house, my ceiling has actually got a bunch of different variations of staining and flashing from different paint jobs. Maybe the odd mouse that died in an attic, rotted away and left a little brown mark. This is also a stain blocker. Now, I'm gonna follow my own advice here because you only have to make this mistake once and you'll never do it again. Don't ever paint with oil without eye protection. All right, now, this is a foam roller, which means if you put pressure on it, you get a lot of paint coming out, okay? So we want to use a little bit of pressure to load the paint roller, but when we're actually painting the ceiling, you're just making contact. You should paint and see spots where it didn't get painted, okay? And then you can add more pressure as necessary to make sure it all goes white and it's drying out. When the roller is brand new, the foam is still absorbing paint. Once you've used it for 3 or 4 rolls, okay, it'll be so full of paint that it'll just drip right off the ceiling. One of the coolest things about oil paint is you can stretch it out and stretch it out and stretch it out. It's not like a latex where it gets soaked up right away, okay? And because it's a stippled ceiling, you're going to get off spray. you're gonna get little spots of white flying everywhere. Now, if your ceilings have never been painted before, less pressure the better, because you can actually flatten out the texture, all right? And you don't get roller lines in your ceiling. So that's why this is important. Now the secret, guys, I should just mention this, because we are dealing with asbestos here. Our report calls it stable, which means it's not active. I can't paint this to release it in the air, all right? So what we're doing by painting is we're guaranteeing that it's not gonna go anywhere into the air. Ever, ever, ever. So if you were to buy a house, you got old ceilings like this and you test positive, you don't have to tear them all out. You don't have to go down the abatement route. You can do all this route and just encapsulate it. Okay, so you can see my lead arm got some paint on it. Very dangerous. Don't leave this around for your kids to get into, okay? We're just gonna take our rag, or in my case, my paper towel. Just gonna dab it. And watch. This stuff is like a miracle worker. Yeah, it smells a little bit like gasoline. That's why it's called Vaseline. It's very similar to a gasoline product. Remember, these are oil-based cleaners for removing oil-based paint. It's that simple, all right? Okay, guys, time to do our fill coat today. I prefer to work off of a platform instead of using a ladder. All right, so now our stipple is encapsulated. To double check, we're gonna go like this. I didn't see anything come off, did you? Good. That's how we know it's safe. Now the secret here is to fill this, make it smooth, without sanding through this paint and releasing that asbestos. So, to do that, we're gonna use Sheetrock 45. Now I've already filled up my pail to about here with water, and I used hot water, because the goal today, of course, is to get a fill coat and then have it dry enough that we can do a second fill coat. So the way we do that is we take the powder, drywall compound, 45 means it's about 45 minutes working time. When you mix this stuff into a pail of hot water though, you also get about 45 minutes of drying time, and it cuts your working time in half. Like, this stuff is a chemical reaction, like I always teach, and adding heat and or salt will affect that chemical reaction and make it happen faster, so we do not have a lot of time to play with here. All right, now, this is not perfect mud, nor does it need to be, okay? Just remember, we're using it to fill up the thick texture in the ceiling. I don't care if it's a little bit, chunky. Chunky monkey is fine in this situation. So I got my hawk, and it's dirty because it's being used. And I got my hawk mate, which is the special tool screwed on the back, carries my trowels, okay? We're gonna just pull a lot of mud out of here onto the hawk. Try to reduce the number of times I gotta get up and down off the ladder here. How much mud you put in this hawk all depends on how thin it is and how runny it is. When you first make this mud, it's usually a little bit runny on purpose. So it extends its working time, right? Here we go. Now we'll jump up here. This is just a demonstration, so don't mind the wallpaper border. Okay, all this is getting ripped out because we're gonna do a complete asbestos abatement on this job, right? Here we go. Now, this is how this works. You take an empty hawk, 4x10, pull it off, get a good chunk of mud on there. All right, you like that? And you just set it, and you're not trying to scrape it off, just trying to fill it in. I'm not using pressure, okay? Another pull. I'm feeling the bumps because every texture is a little bit different. That's what's happening to the blade, that's fine. What we want to make sure is we don't leave excess mud on and create brand new ridges. That's all I'm doing here. All right. And we're gonna fill and fill and fill. Now I'm not really scraping against the ceiling, just lightly pulling, which is amazing. Okay, there we go. We use a different tool for the edge. I'm gonna show you that technique in just a second, but that's basically us filling the ceiling, okay? I'm gonna do a little bit more of this. Hawks are awesome. They're much better than pans because when you're working, you can catch all your drips. Okay? If you're new to this, make less. Especially if you're on well water. Well water has a lot of minerals and that affects the drying time of the stuff as well. Okay, so now we're going to take a 4-inch knife and take a decent dollop of mud. Okay, and we're going to just apply it gently the same way. And here's how, see that? Caught. All right, here we go. Now we're going to run that along. We want to intentionally make sure we overfill this, okay? I want to see mud all over the wall. The way you do this kind of work, because you're creating a flat ceiling, you want a perfect transition, is then you run your knife against the wall, get the extra mud, you see that little shadow here? And then after you've cleaned it, then you set that mud back into the wall by doing that, okay? Now we can come back and stay flat. If you stay open, you've got a sharper edge, okay? If you stay flat, you'll hit a bump and it'll just drive over top of that bump. This will remove excess mud without scraping the ceiling off. Okay? When you start to hear that rumbly bumbly sound, it means you're right up against those bumps. And that's okay. There we go. All right. I don't need much more mud here, guys. Okay, so here's what I want to do. Because drywall compound doesn't actually bond to plastic very well, we just want to wipe it off as best we can. Okay? And then when you're done, at the end of the day, when you're finished with this, we're going to want to let it dry in here and go hard. And it'll create like a block. So what we do is we just go like this. That's just a relief. All right? Now, tomorrow, we'll show this on the camera. It would be fun. We'll pop this out and we'll have a brand new pail that we can make mud in again. There we go. Now we're going to use the 4-inch now, knock down a lot of these really thick ridges, because we don't want to sand in between coats because we're so close to that texture that that's just taking unnecessary risk. So we're encapsulating in oil. Now we're encapsulating in drywall compound. Just getting rid of our ridges by knocking it down, using this knife as flat as possible to achieve that goal. Now here's my pail, and I was going to show you how to clean this out, okay, so that you can use it again. Avec rubber mallet. It's that simple, all right? There we go, and there's one more side here. All right. A lot of you guys want to know, hey, how do you clean these pails? Still there, right? Well, right here, there's a nice solid ring. Oh, that's it. Just a couple of love taps. I'm not smashing through it. I want to puncture a hole. Good pail costs about $7 nowadays. Not bad, eh? Now I can take my wet sponge, wipe that off, and I've got a brand new pail. It's worth the 2 minutes and a $2 hammer. All right. And that is what 45 mud looks like when it dried the next day. Pretty cool. Back to work. Let's take a look at our ceiling here. There you go. Yeah, that's about what I expected. It's what you should expect too, okay? It's not going to be gorgeous. It doesn't have to be. This was about filling that mess in the first attempt to get close enough where we can create something sort of smooth on this coat. Now, this might go contrary to your concept. I know what's mud and what isn't here. This little thing right here. I'm going to cut that off. That's a ridge that I don't need. And maybe a couple more of these little bumps. All right, but for the most part, that's about it. Now I'm gonna just talk a little bit about the science of building. This particular home, we have roof trusses every 24 inches. So about this far apart, okay? And in an older home, there's a very thin vapor barrier. So we have 4-season climate. What happens to the drywall over time is everywhere where it's screwed up to the next location 2 feet away, the drywall actually dips. So you get this wavy effect on the ceiling. And when you're using a 10-inch knife to fill that gap, you can follow that wave, and then you get all of these lines. As I go up and down, I'm always going to have a line because I'm not really filling it flat. I'm filling the texture and following the contour of the ceiling. Let me just show you. Okay, so I'm pretty much flat here. Opens up a bit, and then opens up huge. Now, if you want to make a ceiling flat, you actually have to fill it flat. I could do 2 or 3 skim coats coming this way and have the same result every time with that ridge. And it creates a lot of sanding. I could also say, okay, well, if the framework is going this way, then if I go this way, I'll be fine. But you're going to run the same problem because you're going to be going down and up, okay? And you're not going to fill it flat. And you're going to have lines everywhere you go, and you'll always be sanding. So it's the same rule when we're doing ceiling mud work as when we're sanding hardwood floors. In an old house, because the dimensional floor joists go like this, we sand the floors on a 45-degree angle so that we can create flat lines, all right? We're gonna do the same thing with the mud. I'm gonna use this blade to get that effect, and we're gonna show you how to do this for yourself. Now, this is a drywall skim coat blade, all right? Looks like a big expensive beast, but it's very affordable. I think this one was about 150 bucks. Now, if you're gonna do a skim coat on your whole project and you hire a contractor, he'll charge you anywhere from $7,000 to $15,000 to make all your ceilings flat. So investing in a good tool is definitely money in the bank, all right? Let's jump into this. All right, guys, so we're back to our all-purpose mud. It's nice if you can find it in a pail because you're gonna wanna mix it. All-purpose compound, light, because we're gonna use a lot. It's nice if it's light. Just because it comes in a pail or in a box and it looks like it's pre-mixed and not a powder like the last product we used, doesn't mean it's ready to apply, okay? That looks pretty silky smooth, right? Pretty creamy. But you see all those little air bubbles? As soon as I stroke through my finger with it, let me do it this way. See all the air bubbles? Okay? This is how it comes from the factory. Not ready. So you take your extra large coffee and you fill it halfway full of water and you pour that in there, right? You drop in your mixing blade and then you tighten that sucker on. Now, you're gonna hear an expression on this channel, less is more. A lot of times when you're doing drywall work, less is more. In this particular case, more is better. This is an act of applying it and then taking off what we don't need. I'll show you how. I'm not looking to put it on skinny. I'm looking to put it on about as thick as I possibly can. This is preparation for the third coat. Now the third coat is going to go on thin enough that we can get rid of all those air bubbles that you see in the ceiling right now as I apply it. All right, this is not going to be an issue. It's not going to affect the project. Okay. All right, now, yes, you're going to go through a fair amount of mud, but your option is to tear all your ceilings out. Depending on the age of the home, you might not even have a vapor barrier in the ceiling to hold the insulation in place. So things can escalate really quickly. Because it's a lightweight compound, we don't have to worry about this falling off the ceiling. We'll just keep on throwing it on up here until we're comfortable that every part of the ceiling has got a nice healthy coat. All right, and of course, I'm not gonna do the whole ceiling. This is just a demonstration. Now we got two options here. We can use skill or we can use a tool. Here's what it looks like using skill. And I'm a little rusty, so be kind in the comment section. Okay, we're gonna wanna go like this across on a 45. That looks pretty good. Now I've got a little bit of air bubbles here. We might try another pass. But you see, I'm still leaving a track mark. So now you gotta try to figure out, okay, so where's the actual ridge in the ceiling? Oh, I'll try to clean this one up. Oh, I got 2 more track marks. All right, well, let's go down here a little bit and we'll try this way. Oh, it wasn't so terrible. Let's get rid of this track mark now. Oh, well, you're gonna make another track mark all day long. 10 inches is not long enough for this project, okay? It's just not gonna do the job. Sometimes you need something that's 2 or 3 feet long, which is why you wanna buy the great big blade. Now we're gonna reinstate all that mud that I pulled off because that ain't helping nobody being gone. So if skill isn't gonna work, actually let's try the 2 foot first. Because I know there's gonna be some of you at home going, oh, I went shopping for that blade, Jeff, but the 2 foot was so much more affordable. I think it was only 75 bucks. So I picked it up. Now this is a 2 foot, so if you go from peak to peak, you could actually fill it. But it's gotta be pretty darn exact, doesn't it? All right, and take a little bit back left here. That worked, not bad, eh? Now, we're gonna try the next section over. We'll see if we still get a line, because we don't know where the peaks and the valleys are. Okay. And one more pull, I'll go a little heavier. That's not terrible. All right, that's not terrible. I'm just saying. We'll try the big boy. One pass. Uh-oh. Why is it leaving a line? Did somebody get a scratch in my toy? No, it was just dirt in the mud. Okay, that is also very effective. Now, we're gonna try it on a 45 this time. And we'll see if this works. That works as well. I think the point of the story here is bigger is obviously better, right? We can even get in right into the inside corners and do most of this work in advance of getting our 4-inch out. We're still gonna need it. There's no way around it. Okay. Now you're allowed to pull pretty tight here. Okay? The worst thing you're gonna do is you're gonna run on the ridge of one of those other mud lines. But since we have another full coat left, the tighter we pull it, the less air pockets we get on the ceiling. The easier it is to fill next time. All right. Now, if you buy this tool, when you're done using it, take a sponge to wash it. This edge is very sharp, okay? Just like treat it like a French knife. There's a reason we call them drywall knives. And then once you've washed it, get that guard on there and put it somewhere where the kids can't play with it, okay? Yeah, it's not a toy. All right. Okay, now we got to deal with this edge because my ceiling is still a mess, right? My ceiling edge is still a mess. We're going to have one more coat after this. Same thing, put it on, pull it with a 4-inch, and then gently blend it in, okay? The majority of your sanding on this ceiling is going to be right here, whatever ridge you end up leaving after your 4-inch knife. Okay, so the more of this we can get rid of, the better. Now, when you're doing mud work, always go from the new application back towards what you've fixed, okay? By that I mean this. I've got new mud here. I don't start here, because what happens is I leave a line. I've now put a dent in my mud. So the correct way to do it, put a little bit on here actually, is to pull from the corner. Okay, now I'm going to pull from this side back to what it's finished and then release my pressure. I get hardly just a little tiny wrinkle. And I'm going to clean that wall again like I told you. And we're going to flatten that one out, and I'm going to come back and tighten that up. So when you're coming off the ceiling, you're pulling away from it, okay? Now, try to make that nice and tight. Try this now. Here we go. One more time, working towards what's fixed. Okay, and we're gonna flatten that. And we're gonna groove that, pull right back on it again. And then when I'm happy, I'll release from the ceiling. Take your knife almost flat, it'll flatten it all out without leaving a line, in most cases. Okay? Now, when we come back here, and this is still a lot of mud, right? We don't want to come back here tomorrow on this. We want to give this an extra day. You want to go 48 hours. Unless you've got dry conditions, high-powered fans, if you're moving a lot of air, dehumidification going on, if you're in an environment where you can have air conditioning running, that'd be great. You can probably come after 24 hours. But in the spring here in Canada, it's raining outside, forget about it. It's warm enough we don't have the heat. It's not warm enough to have the AC. The air is humid. This is going to take 2 days to dry. All right? So consider the conditions that you're working in when you come up with a process. But the point is this. We have the ceiling that's painted. We got the first coat. We got the second coat. Look at this ridge. Look how much mud I've got on here just to get it smooth. All right, but I didn't feel any bumps along the way this time on the second coat, which means the next time I come in here, I can come in here with my sander and I can give the ceiling a light sanding to knock down any bumps or any ridges. And then when we do the next coat, we're gonna put it on thin, even wetter than the last coat and nice and taut, right? We're gonna make this ceiling absolutely perfect. All right, guys, final step for painting. And here it is in a nutshell. Thanks for joining us, by the way. If this kind of information is helpful, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Now check this out. We roll one direction, and then we cut. Okay, that's how you do the first coat. I'm going to recommend you get a ceiling paint that is with no acrylic in it. That will help create a very matte ceiling look. The more gloss, the more acrylic, the more reflection, the more the light is bouncing around, the more imperfections show up, okay? So roll it, then you take your brush. It's as simple as this. Come along on the thin side, okay? Just get a little bit of a wet edge in there. Make sure everything is perfect. All right? And then when you go to do the second coat, do the same thing, okay? But this time you do it backwards. Second coat, you want to finish with the roll. You want to keep your edge wet. So we're going to start with your brush, okay? And do as much edging as you can paint in the next 5 minutes so that you're always wet on wet, okay? And then you can do a roll, you can do a bit of a cut, you can do some more rolling. Keep the edge wet. And all you do with the second coat, just go the opposite direction, okay? This will help to eliminate the risk of paint lines in your ceiling. And you don't use much pressure. You just back roll like this. And then all that extra paint gets picked back up in the roller instead of being left on the ceiling, so it doesn't become a great big drippy mess. And you too can turn popcorn ceilings into a stunning, better than new home construction, flat ceiling like a pro. Cheers till next time.